The internet. With the lockdowns, this is how we connect with the world. This is how we keep our sanity. We use it to stream shows to our TV and to stream our lives to the world. We use it for learning, for business, to connect to the remote office from the comfort of our home. But sometimes things don't go as we hoped. A lot of people have realized that their internet speed is not quite as fast as they thought it was. And so now they're unable to actually do what they hope to do. Why is that, and what can we do? This is what we are going to talk today. Let's begin. Hello everybody, my name is Paolo and I'll be your internet guide today. Consumers in the US have been victims of what I consider to be one insidious scam perpetrated by most internet providers. That is, they've been told half-truths about the service provided, and the companies go to extremely convoluted steps to avoid revealing really how bad their services are. Let's look at how a typical internet provider, Comcast in this case, advertises its offering. By the way, Comcast uses the brand Xfinity to sell their internet services. So if we look at the Xfinity page where the plans are advertised, this is what we see. And if you're wondering which one is the better deal, then stop, because they're all terrible. There is no winner here. So this is where the deception, in my opinion, begins. See those numbers, 25, 100 Mbps. See, the funny thing here is this. Comcast is bound to advertise truthfully, but that doesn't mean that they need to make it easy for you to understand. In fact, they are using some pretty sneaky techniques here. What does Mbps mean? You see, there is a capital M and a lowercase b, and you might think, oh, that's just capitalization. No, that's not the case. Because there is a precise way of writing unit of measures for technical information, for IT. And the lowercase b means bits. So this is 25 megabits per second. Now, this is important because the accepted convention, whenever we talk about technology in general, is to use bytes. You know, when you buy a computer, that is advertised with, I don't know, 8 or 16 gigabytes of RAM and 2 terabytes of hard disk, of storage. And when you buy a telephone, you are choosing between the 32, 64, 128 gigabytes storage model. So the byte is the accepted mainstream popular default, if you want. And so when you're writing Mbps, you are exploiting that. This is not an accident, it is by design. Simply because by using a smaller unit of measure, the bit, it makes their terrible products, their terrible services look better. Their speeds seem faster. We don't transmit data by the bits. We send bytes, megabytes, gigabytes, sometimes terabytes of data, not billions and millions of bits. But using a smaller unit of measure makes the number look bigger when they're not. By the way, if you don't know the difference between bits and bytes, or that concept is not clear, then I just made a series of 3 videos to explain exactly that. The link is up there. And I did that exactly to explain why all this stuff works in the way it works. And I made those videos before this one exactly to give you a reference point. So if you are not clear about what is a byte, why we use it, what is the function of a byte, why it makes sense to speak of bits and bytes, go to the link. Please go and watch the video. It's a simple series of 3 videos. They are 10 minutes each, very easy to digest. I kept the concepts as clean and easy to understand. So go now and then come back here. Now, all those numbers we see on the Comcast website or any other provider for that matter need to be divided by 8. Why 8? You might ask, because there are 8 bits in each byte. So just to give you an example, and this is because we need to have meaningful unit of measures. If you use a bunch of files and you see their sizes in megabytes or gigabytes, and then you try to map them into megabits, it's going to be an absurdity to try to make that exercise. It's absurd. It is. This is all about marketing, okay? So, just to give you an example, if you look at a classic MP3 file, a song, 4 minutes in length, it will have about 9 megabytes of size. You can verify this because you can open your file manager on Windows or Macintosh and look at the sizes. They're always expressed in bytes, kilobytes, megabytes, or gigabytes. Never in megabits. That would be nonsense. Look, it's like a car manufacturer that makes a car that does only 8 miles per gallon. They would never advertise such a product because, well, nobody would buy it. It's such a terrible number, 8 miles per gallon. But wait, if they say, well, this car has a fuel efficiency of 12,800 meters per gallon, then it sounds very impressive, isn't it? Oh my God, 12,800, can you believe it? Well, it's exactly the same number, just expressed with another unit of measure. It just looks a lot bigger. See, the parallel here is perfect because in the US, most people are not familiar with the metric system. So using that system would be similar to using megabits per second. Because again, most people who are going to buy this kind of services, the consumer at large, people like you, are not very familiar with bits and bytes, especially megabits per second. And here is the thing. When you write Mbps, you don't spell it out. You're obfuscating the meaning of what you're selling. And they do it on purpose. They do it on purpose. Don't think otherwise. It will be very simple on the website. There is plenty of space on that page to write spelled out megabits per second. You could write megabits /second, for example. It's perfectly fine. But no, they choose to write Mbps because maybe you're gonna get a doubt there. Maybe they mean megabytes per second. I mean, that by the byte being the default expression that we use in computer lingo, it's fairly reasonable to think if you don't spell it out, that is what people will assume, and in effect, that is exactly what happens. Anyway, now our fantastic, I'm being sarcastic here, 25 megabits per second are a more effective 3.1 megabytes per second. See, I told you that it wouldn't look very impressive, but it is exactly the same thing. Now, whatever speed we are talking about, so let's say, let's just to stay on the 25 megabits per second. Whatever speed we are talking about, you have to also realize that is a theoretical speed. That's why the website of Comcast says up to. It doesn't mean that that is going to be the speed all the time. That's a theoretical limit. What does that mean? So your 3.1 megabytes per second or 25 megabits per second are going to be happening only if you are connecting your device with a wire to the modem or the router. Now, if you're not clear about which one is which, what's the difference between a modem and a router, just leave me a comment below, because I will make a video about that. Modem, router, two completely different things. They're working together, but they're not the same thing. Anyway, so you're wiring your device to the modem or the router. That means, of course, if you are using a phone, you cannot do that. But on a computer, yeah, you would be using a high quality wire to the router, and in that moment, nobody else is on the net in your household, and the gods of speed are smiling at you, and your data is going downhill. Then you might get your 3.1 megabytes per second or 25 megabits per second for a short time. And then it will go back to a general speed, which is, approximately 80-85%, more likely around 80%. If you're using coaxial cable, then the speed depends on the amount of traffic there is in your neighborhood, because you're all sharing the same backbone, okay? So those speeds that you see are advertised, they need to be converted to bytes per second, megabytes per second, so divided by 8, and then take about an 80%, because depending on the fluctuation and many other factors, that is not the maximum speed that you're going to get at all times. More reasonably, and that's okay, that's normal. I'm not making a criticism here. This is how internet works in general. But it is important that we understand that those numbers are up to theoretical limit divided by 8, and you're getting more of a reasonable picture. And that is what we are looking at today. How are you going to shop for your internet speed in a way that will work for you, your family, your household, and you all be able to use it effectively? The important thing is to not have surprises. You might decide to budget in one way or the other. The important thing is, though, that you don't get bad surprises. If you thought you bought a product and then it turns out to be something different, that's a negative experience. So I'm here trying to help you avoid that experience. Now let me give you a concrete example and see how everyday tasks then converts into data that goes on the internet. So let's say that you're planning to use Zoom for video calls, or maybe it's FaceTime or Messenger, it doesn't matter. And you're using a camera capable of 1080p resolution. So 1080p means 1080 lines per screen. Each line is divided by 1920 pixels, so 1920 pixels. All right, let's do a couple of calculations here. I promise it's going to be easy. So let's start understanding how much data we need to transfer for each screen. Okay, we talked about 1080, so that's 1080 lines divided by 1920 pixels. So our amount of pixels, if we want to find out, is 1920 by 1080 for a total of 2,073,600 pixels per screen. Every time we want to send 1 high definition 1080p screen, we need to send data that defines 2,073,600 pixels. Now, what is a pixel? Again, if you didn't see my previous video with the tutorial about digital, I invite you to go see it again, or see it this time, sorry. And the link is right there above, because in there I make sense of why we need at least 3 bytes per pixel. One for red, one for green, one for blue. So our 2 million plus become 6,220,800 bytes for each screenshot. Now that's about 6 megabytes put in another unit of measure. And that is for one screenshot. But in video, we have normally 30 frames per second. So those 6.2 megabytes, we have to multiply them by 30 to get the amount of data that we send per each second. And that is a good 186,624,000 bytes per second. So now you see that if you're capable of doing 25 megabits per second, or actually realistic in some of these plans, you know, they're using 10 megabits per second, which is equivalent to about 1 megabyte per second without sound. This is just image, without all the accessory data that we need, which we need. It doesn't fit. Now, video is very heavy, and normally every camera manufacturer, any software house that creates software for handling video uses very smart compression algorithms. And that means that the data is going to be much less. But keep in mind that it's still humongous. Whenever we are working with video, we are talking about massive amount of data. And if you want to compress it, it's always a lossy compression. When you know, this is used for internet transmission. Lossy means that we are not compressing data, making it smaller and expanding it at the other side without losing data. It is a lossy compression, which means that we lose data. Normally, this is done by averaging colors in the frame. If you have ever watched Netflix or any other streaming service, and you saw some of those blocky areas of the frame, especially in dark portions of the image, that is exactly what's happening there. It's compression at work. It's averaging. There are areas of the image that are averaged because they are seen, they're calculated to be of similar color and intensity, and so the software takes a matrix of a certain amount of pixels, you know, a square of, I don't know, 32 by 32 pixels, and averages the color, which results in that blocky appearance. If you have a faster internet connection, then that phenomenon is much less visible, because in order to squeeze the image, to pump data through a connection that is perceived, is calculated by the software, not being able to push more than a certain amount of data, then you have two choices. Either you don't do it at all, or you do it at much lower quality. But the situation gets even worse, because, and this is what a lot of people don't know, speed, internet speed is not symmetrical. What does that mean? It means that there are two directions One is download and one is upload, and the two speeds are completely different. And if you are in doubt which one means which, let me just explain. When data goes from the internet to you, that's download. For example, right now you're watching this video, so it's streaming from YouTube, from a computer on the internet owned by YouTube, to you, to your device. It doesn't matter that that is a phone or a computer, it's the same thing. We are streaming from the internet to you. That is download. Now, let's say that you have just taken a funny picture and you wanted to send it to somebody in your family. You want to send it to grandma. Then that picture goes from you to the internet, and that is upload speed. It's upload for you, download for grandma, because grandma is receiving it from the internet to her telephone. So upload and download are two separate things, and almost every single internet provider doesn't give you the same speed in upload and download. In fact, the upload speeds are absolutely abysmal, and they are so poor, they are so bad, that Comcast, for example, doesn't tell you anymore what they are, because it's just terrible. And they used to, in the past, when I was using them, I remember I had a speed of 25 megabits per second. I had, I think, 250 download, 25 upload. Now, their speeds are so poor that they are actually hiding them. And I just found out that in general it is about 10 megabits per second. Even if you buy a high-speed download plan, and that is just terrible. Their forums are filled with complaints from people, from their clients, from the customers, complaining about the abysmal upload speed. Because we are doing a lot of video nowadays, because of the physical distance, the lockdowns and all that kind of stuff, video has become very predominant, and it's going to be also for the future time, because this situation, like it or not, has shifted the way people are using video. There will be much more, and so having a terrible upload speed, 10 megabits per second, is terrible. You know what 10 is? 10 is actually 1 megabyte per second. That's incredible. That's absolutely horrible. Because 10 would be, 1.2, I think, but we know that speed is not, you're not going to hit that 10 all the time. It's going to be more like 8 megabits per second. So 8 divided by 8, it's 1. You have 1 megabyte per second. That's incredible. So what can we do? So the first thing you want to do is to go to fast.com from a browser in one of your devices. Now, optimally, the device would be wired directly to your router or modem. If it's not possible, then make sure that you are close to your Wi-Fi router and that possibly nobody else in your network is connected at that moment. And so then what you do is you open your browser and you go to fast.com. This is a speed test app on the web that is designed by Netflix, so it's not run by any specific telecom company, which could be making the app biased. This is a third party, and so we go there and we launch fast.com, and after a while you'll see the speed moving, and this is the download speed. And my situation currently is that I have a 500 megabits per second line, but a 300 megabit modem. So I'm peaking at 300. Sometimes it gets to 300, but as you see now, we are about 250, which is confirming. my claim before that you will never get your top speed, your top advertised speed. So let's just for the heck of it, let's rerun it and see if there is any difference. The difference that we see now is, you say, actually now it's lower. So what factors influence this? 320, 330. So we get those peaks and then we get kind of an average. This depends on the traffic, for example. There you go, 300. So this depends on the traffic that is currently going through the whole neighborhood, because with cable, for example, this is what I use in my connection. I have a coaxial cable. With cable, you're sharing your backbone with the rest of the neighborhood. So depending on their traffic, you might get some slowdowns or not. So once you get this, you see that there is a show more info here button. So you click on that button to get also the speed in the upload direction, the upload speed. So let's see how that works. And okay, I have 52. So my current speed is 352. I suggest that you do this 3 times through different times of the day, and you take note, and then you average, and you get that as your average speed for your connection. Then, if the numbers are not right, it's time to shop around. So if you're using Netflix or any kind of TV streaming to the household, and you have multiple people at home, then I would suggest to start with a minimum of 12.5 megabytes per second, or as the telecom companies like it to advertise, it's 100 megabits per second. Upload speed should be at least 25 megabits per second. That is if you need to do any kind of video streaming from your house to anybody else. If you don't do that, if you have less, that is where video starts getting all choppy, blurry, it starts freezing, and then you have voice like that. It happened. I see it this every single week. So 125, okay? That is your starting point. Now, if you find somebody else, some provider that gives you a better deal, that's fantastic. Now, the minimum 25 megabits per second of upload, that pretty much cuts out Comcast in general, because all their plans are now capped at 10. That's just not usable. And unless you're using, I think unless you're buying their gigabit per second speed, that's a possibility. It's more expensive. It's up to you. So the important takeaways from today are 2. One is to make sure that you understand the real speed that you have, the speed in megabytes per second. And number 2 is that you are completely aware of your speed of upload, the upload speed, because that is becoming more and more crucial for our everyday work. Anyway, I hope this was useful. If it was, why don't you click on like for this video and then click on subscribe for the channel and on the bell so that you will be sure to not miss anything in the future. My name is Paolo with the People's Tech channel. Thank you very much for watching. Ciao.